Hey, what's up, YouTube world? It is your girl here, the Venusian Bull, and I am back with another video. So what we're going to be doing in this series of videos is we're going to be discussing the planets in the 8th house. Yes, I know a lot of people have been waiting for this house. Anything that has to do with the 8th house, Scorpio, Plutonian things, people are always curious. People are always interested. They always want to see, the mystique of this energy. So we're going to be discussing planets in the 8th house, and I'm going to be doing this a little bit differently, as I'm going to have an introductory video to get through with all of like the kind of housekeeping details and everything that the 8th house contains, because I'm going to go very much into depth, pun intended, with the 8th house as it pertains to the planets and things like that. And I didn't want to have to say the same things over and over at the beginning of the video like I usually do, because it's a lot of information and a lot of knowledge that I'm going to be dropping on y'all. So yeah, there will be a description in the comment box of the actual timestamp of when I get to that planet in as it pertains to the 8th house. So don't worry, if you've seen 3 of these, you can skip through them if need be and go just straight to, Sun in the 8th, Mars in the 8th, Moon in the 8th, whatever. Okay. All right. So let's discuss the 8th house a little bit. Okay. So I also want to kind of put a trigger warning on these videos, because the 8th house deals with a lot of kind of taboo topics, the things that we don't really, want to discuss, the things that are buried beneath the surface and things like that, such as sex, such as death, anything that's taboo, and that could be deemed taboo or beneath the surface. That could even mean astrology, or tarot or numerology or any type of occult like studies and mediumship, voodoo, hoodoo, all of that shit. You know what I'm saying? Especially when it comes to kind of like worshiping like ancestors and the dead and things like that. The 8th house has to deal with death, so we may be talking about demons and spirits and all of that type of stuff. So again, trigger warning. And this is the trauma house. A lot of the times I always say that Scorpio is the trauma queen, while Leo is the drama queen. So 8th house energy, there's always going to be some type of trauma that needs to be kind of overcome, but you're not going to escape drama. You're not going to escape trauma having 8th house energy. It's kind of inevitable that you will experience certain things. So I went through the basics: sex, death, anything that has to deal with trauma, transformation, regeneration. This is a very transformative placement. You're always changing, always transforming, and it's usually in major ways. This also has to deal with other people's money, as the 2nd house deals with earned income and money that you earn. The 8th house deals with other people's money. So this isn't necessarily money that you work for. This is money that you get from an inheritance, or like spousal support, or like child support, or like a life insurance policy, or something along those lines. And the 8th house also represents debt that you owe. So not only other people's money, but money that you owe to other people. So creditors, like bankruptcy, all of that stuff that we hate, really, right? I also like to think of the 8th house. The 8th house is kind of about turning trash into treasure. It's very much a purging thing. It's about, getting rid of garbage, and things like that, because Scorpio, which rules the 8th house, actually represents, for lack of a better word, excrement. You know what I'm saying? It represents, the waste out of your body. So it could be like literal waste or like figurative waste that you're kind of doing away with. And that kind of goes along with the transformative aspect of the 8th house. And as a reminder to keep in mind that you need to take account the sign that's on the 8th house cusp, as well as the aspects that the planet is making with any other planets in your chart, because this may modify the energy that you are experiencing in the 8th house, so make sure that you take heed of that. Sometimes I state this periodically in other videos, but I want to get this in the first video, the intro video, so that everybody knows that the characteristics that I state for the planet, you know, that I'm speaking about may vary based off of other variables in your chart. So I want to make that very clear, especially when it comes to, you know, the 8th house, because it's so transformative and it's so, intense, it's so in depth that it can mean so many different things, you know. And speaking of intensity and depth, it has to deal with that. It has to deal with intimate bonds, close bonds. It's the next step up from the 7th house, which is like more like commitment and marriage. And the 8th house is that intimate bond that it's not a you and I, it's a we thing when it gets to the 8th house. So, so it's that as well. And it's, you know, deep, it's about deep connections, and it's about researching, it's about investigating to get down to the bottom and the depths and, you know, the oceans of things. You know, this is a water house. So you have to remember this is an emotional house. People forget that Scorpio is a water sign sometimes, I think, and emotional, because their exterior can be so, you know what I'm saying? It could be very resting bitch face, but remember that this energy needs to feel deeply, like within the depths of their soul. They need to feel right down into their gut. So they need to feel deeply. This house may be prone to experiencing a lot of pain as well, pain and trauma. And usually, in a lot of instances, that's something that people who have this energy, they actually like. So yeah, without any further ado, I'm going to get into the planets in the 8th house. So stay tuned. See ya. Hey, what's up, y'all? So we are going to be discussing Uranus in the 8th house in this video, okay? So just remember that Uranus in the 8th house is similar to having Uranus in Scorpio. That's more, you know, generational. So it's also similar to having Aquarius on the 8th house cusp, okay? So pay attention if you have Aquarius in the 8th house cusp, as well as if you have Uranus in the 8th house, because they can both apply, all right? So this is a very interesting placement, to say the least. Uranus is all about innovation and rebellion and non-conforming and technology and just beating off the normal path and going against the status quo. And it's about activism and all of that type of stuff. And the 8th house, like I've mentioned in all of the videos, is about depth. It's about transformation, evolution, sex, other people's money. So with Uranus in the 8th house, there's a very like unique perspective that you have upon death. In particular, and anything that kind of has to deal with dark or like taboo type of things. They definitely don't scare you. They don't bother you. You embrace that dark side. Uranus in the 8th gives me very goth. It gives me very, you know, like lots of piercings and tattoos. Like it just gives me like, I like pain. And I like to feel pain, because 8th house likes pain anyway, but Uranus just likes to, you know, always be different and always be the rebel and stuff like that. So that's kind of what Uranus in the 8th gives me on a physical level. On a soul level, it's very interested in, Uranus is already about anything that's different than the norm. So the fact that these dark topics like death and sex and things like that are taboo, that's like Uranus's playground. You know what I'm saying? Like they want to experience everything that has to do with, you know, the darkness and the differences and all of the different kind of sex and the kinks. And it's very, you know, trisexual energy. You'll try anything once, child. You will do all of the kinky shit, okay? Remember, I told y'all X-rated, okay? Uranus in the 8th house, they about that life, okay? They're down. Probably even more so than Mars in the 8th house, more so than the sun in the 8th house. Like, you have to understand that Uranus in the 8th house, like, they don't ever, like, missionary, please, bye. Like, what is this? Like, this is just like the corniest sexual position. Like, let's try this shit upside down. You know what I'm saying? And you over there doing a handstand and visuals, okay? Like Uranus in the eighth house is definitely a position that could potentially be exploring their sexuality a lot in terms of, you know, maybe they're bisexual or maybe they're gay, maybe they're trans. I mean, this is all like LGBTQ like territory in terms of the sexual aspect of it. This is very pansexual energy as well. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, this is polyamory energy. This is not monogamous energy, even though, you know, this is the deep connection, intimate bonds type of house. You know that Uranus is like always, they repel against, you know, deepness and soul binding type of things. You know what I'm saying? It's more about the intellect. It's more about, you know, the technical, you know, aspects of it. But I would say deep down, Uranus in the eighth, they still do want those deep connections and stuff. Like, they don't want nobody dumb. Let's keep that all the way a buck too. Like, they don't want nobody dumb. They want somebody who's intellectually and sexually on their level. Like, if you cannot keep up with Uranus in the eighth house, then don't even start. Don't even start. They'll have done everything under the sun. Okay. Like, let's just keep it a buck. And, you know, can be quite promiscuous. I would say this is one of the more promiscuous placements of the eighth house. Any placement in the eighth house has the potential to be promiscuous because it's sex related. But Uranus in the eighth house has the potential to be very promiscuous because they just are interested in all of the, like, the taboos and darkness of sex, and they kind of want to try everything. And this is also a placement that could be very prone to being involved in the porn industry and creating movies, being an innovator for porn or type of sexual. You know what this gives me? This gives me like documentaries about sex, not sex itself. It doesn't have to be like that explicit, but like people's experiences. Also low-key Neptune in the eighth house, but we're not there yet. But this gives me documentaries because you want to teach people, you want them to learn, you know what I'm saying? And, you know, you want them to be, you know, kind of, you know, prepared for, you know, the future and stuff like that. Like, you could do a documentary on like polyamory or something like that, polygamy, you know what I'm saying? Or, you know, just like kinks and like BDSM, just like kind of like the origins of that and history. But you have to understand that Uranus isn't about like history like that. They're more about the future and what it can bring. So that's kind of always going to be like Uranus's angle is about the future and being progressive, and things of that nature. This is somebody, because Uranus energy is very rebellious, they have an activism spirit. Like, this is one of the things they fight for, like all about like sex positive and talk, you know, talk about sex, talk about it in the right way, in the correct way, you know, to your kids. Like, let's not be coy about STDs. Like, let's let people know what it is. And, you know, like, let's not be so, like, Uranus in the eighth house is going to be very outspoken about the way that they feel about, you know, sexual, I guess, progression, you know, in this day and time. They're all about promoting, you know, just these healthy kind of sexual experiences, and everything doesn't have to be nasty or distasteful. You know, it's just what some people, you know, like to do. And people need to stop being like, in a Uranus in the eighth house mind, they need to stop being so prudish and being so, you know, being so old fashioned about the approach, you know, to sex and things like that. Another thing to think about with Uranus in the 8th house, particularly as it pertains to death, is unfortunately there could be circumstances where you may lose a friend. You know, Uranus represents friends. So you may experience the death of a really, really close friend. And you have to remember that your friends with Uranus in the 8th house are probably your most intimate relationships with people. You may not have those like intimate, like romantic relationships necessarily. Like you have romantic relationships, but they don't get intimate in the sense that you're able to be vulnerable with them and divulge like the information that you wouldn't anybody else. And you can really open up. Like your friends are kind of the ones that you do that with. So you have those close personal relationships with them. You definitely don't do that with your family, child. Uranus energy rebels against family, and like repels against it, honestly. You know, you're always looking for like, this is a combination of, you know, transformation and innovation. So it's all about like new like technologies and new ways to like heal. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know like how to particularly like word this, but you know, you could just be, you know, thinking of like new like ways to help with, you know, I don't know, people's libido or just, you know, like sexual, you know, trauma. It's all about being progressive in the areas of the 8th house, and evolving and transforming and kind of being the trendsetter when it comes to that. Uranus represents, you know, groups and organizations. So maybe you are the head of like a nonprofit for, you know, people who were sexually abused or something like that, or, you know, women or the LGBTQ people who, you know, experience, you know, sexual assault, or who have HIV or something like that. You're very like organization oriented, nonprofit oriented to things that have to do with sex and empowerment, empowering yourself through sex, like not being a whore necessarily or a hoe, just like empowering yourself through sex and knowing that you have power through that and you don't have to be a victim, and you don't have to feel like you're less than because this is something that you enjoy. You know what I'm saying? So I definitely see that, you know, the nonprofits and the organizations that have to deal with, you know, helping people with their sexuality and things of that nature. And just, you know, being, you know, forward thinking about these things, definitely into the metaphysical practices, like astrology, like I've said in all of my videos prior. Definitely with a focus on, you know, the future and things like that. So you're going to be looking into healing as a way to evolve for the future. It's like it's not necessarily about the present, it's about the future in terms of your evolution. I mean, that's, you know, transformation in general, but a lot of times people have to kind of look back in the past to see how they can transform. And Uranus is very much about, I already did that. That was done. It was trash and we're going to just move on. So it's kind of that mindset. Now, I haven't talked that much about the criminality of the 8th house. I have in a couple of the videos in this, but let's just say because Uranus is such a rebel that they, and they're so like against authority and against the norm, you could definitely find yourself getting in trouble, getting into situations where, you know, you may get arrested, or you may, you know, go to jail, and that, you know, jeopardizes your freedom because Uranus wants to be free, especially if you're trying to stand up for something or stand up for someone, you know what I'm saying? So definitely, just keep that in mind. The rebel spirit is there, and because this energy is in the 8th house, you're prone to, darkness and, criminality, whether that be your friends that you may associate with. So be careful, of the friends that you associate with, because they may get you, mixed into things that are not necessarily good for you or good for your soul and your development and your evolution and, things of that nature. So keep an eye out on that. The research aspect, because 8th house is all about research and delving deep, is very, very prominent with Uranus in the 8th house. And it gives a nice balance to the whole like technical and soulful aspect, I will say, because Uranus energy is very technical. They're not really feeling, but when you put it in the 8th house, it gives a nice little combination of that kind of objective, kind of technical energy when it comes to researching things and stuff like that. I should have mentioned this in the Saturn in the 8th house video as well, but definitely would make a good detective. Definitely, CIA. Let's say CIA. No, not Central Intelligence Agency, but crime scene investigator. But low key, Uranus in the 8th house. Uranus in the 8th house could be CIA. You know what I'm saying? Because it's all about like the secretiveness of it, and you can't really tell anybody, and it's, this top secret government agency or a government agency within the CIA. It's very B613 from Scandal that it's giving me low key. But yeah, definitely a great researcher, definitely a great developer of new innovative ways to catch the killer. You know what I'm saying? To, speak to people who are, criminals and things like that. I hope I'm making sense with this video, because I feel like I'm kind of rambling and bubbling. And sometimes when I just keep talking, I come out with a point. So I hope that you guys are receiving this information with Uranus in the 8th house, because Uranus is just up here, like they're very like intellectually, potent. So I hope that I'm giving this information and you guys are able to receive it. But yeah, the crime scene investigator aspect, just the research aspect of Uranus in the 8th house, and the technological aspect of Uranus in the 8th house would be very prevalent when it comes to, solving crimes, new innovative ways to like solve crimes. Like you guys would be the one to, I don't know if this job exists, but you would be the one to be like, okay, I'm going to create a position for myself in, for this, precinct or this prison or something like that, or this, this city where I can, if there's a lack of evidence or you guys can't figure out who done it or whatever the case may be, I'm going to use my, psychic powers, my power of visions and my astrological abilities and my tarot abilities. I'm going to be able to figure out, who killed this person and who robbed this bank and, all of that type of stuff. You know what I mean? I really do think that a lot of these, investigative forces do need to have, an astrologer or a tarot reader or a psychic nearby, because sometimes when the evidence is scarce and you don't really have, all you have is circumstantial evidence, and maybe you don't even have witnesses, or you don't have a really good witness, sometimes you need to lead with the divine. Sometimes you need to lead with that like metaphysical energy, and you are dealing with somebody who knows what they're doing. You know what I'm saying? And understands their power as a, not just a healer, but as someone who's able to get information from spirits, from, astrology, from, talking to the dead and things like that. So that's a very innovative way to looking at solving crimes. It's like Mercury in the 8th house, but to the 10th power with Uranus. So Uranus can definitely do that. That's it took me a long time to get to that, but that's an example of how Uranus can use their innovativeness as it pertains to the 8th house and things of that nature. So, okay. So I think that I definitely covered what I'm going to cover in this video. Again, if you happen to have this placement and there's anything that I missed, I know I missed a lot of stuff. So please feel free to put that shit in the comments. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.